Hello. Have you ever wanted to test an API and maybe you want to debug a login request or see exactly what data the website sends and receives without actually using a browser? In this video, I will show you how to use cURL as cURL, one of the most powerful command line tools used by developers, system admin, cybersecurity professionals. And by the end of this tutorial, you should be able to send gets and post requests, work with header, authenticate APIs, and even use cURL for security testing. I'm your host on this channel, Dr. Ayo Adenuga. So let's get into the business and define what cURL is. So what is cURL? cURL. It stands for client URL. And of course, I believe you know the meaning of URL. The full meaning is Uniform Resource Locator. That's the locator for the resources you have at the back end through which the client, that's your browser, is able to access the data that is stored in the back end. So it's a command line tool that lets you send and receive data over the network as if you're sending it through the browser. Support protocol like HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, SMTP, and many more. So in simple terms, it allows you to manually, now you can underline that. It allows you to manually interact with web server the same way a browser will do, but with full control. So all is used for APIs, debugging, automation, API debugging, automation, and security testing. So let's get into the first one, the basic one. But before we go into that, let me do a disclaimer. All logs that are shown in this tutorial are generated from public testing and from the tools that are designed for HTTP inspection and education. No read system or private data are involved. And I advise you, if you want to learn how to use cURL, use it on public testing services that are designed for HTTP inspection and for educational purposes. You can only use it on systems that you have the right to work on in real life. So, but for testing, for learning, use it on services that are designed for that purpose. Okay. So the first one we look at is look at the basic command for cURL. It says cURL, that's the URL. But this time around, you see the way the cURL is written is not with a cap of URL. The name of the tool is written, as you see, lowercase c and uppercase URL. But in the command line interface, when you are now using it, you write everything in lowercase cURL. Then, so we are using HTTP bin as our learning tool. And when you send this GET request, you can see what we have done here, cURL, then the URL /get. And this will be the HTTP bin, that's the server response in JSON format. Okay, So the tags that you see there, let's begin to analyze what each component means. That's the URL query parameter. So it is empty because nothing is sent. We did not specify any argument. So that's why it is empty. And you can see the header. So in the header, you have assets, you have post, which is http.org. Then you have the user agent. That's it identifies the client, which client is sending the request. And the client that is sending the request is call. And if you want to know the version of the call, just in the command line terminal, just write call, then dash version. It will give you. So I am using version 8.5.0. Okay. And you can see the trace ID for the root and the origin. That is the IP of the source, the IP of the client that is sending the request. And you can see the URL. All right. So, but if you want a more detailed response, you use the flag V, you add it to this particular command, and it will provide a more detailed response. So this one is like a bridge response that is sent back. But when you use V, that is verbose. You're telling the command to, or the server to send back detail, and that is what you will receive. So we have example in the next slide. So you can see here all V HTTPS. You can see the same thing, but only addition of V provided all this information. Okay, so look at the screen. You see it says HTTPS host HTTP bin.org 443 was resolved, meaning that it's HTTPS because it's port 443. IPv6 is none, IPv4. So these are the associated IPv4. Then trying, then when it's connected, it's connected to on port 443. And you can see in HTTP 1.1, then TLS version 1.3, and TLS handshake client hello. So everything like that, you'll see how the handshake went, and you'll be able to follow the actions as you can read through. So that's why it's good for debugging, because when you are able to see the detail like this, you know, you might be able to spot where there is problem with your web server or the browser. So, and you can see the certificates, server certificates, you can see it, and on like that. So this is, I will go to the next slide. This is page 1 of what was provided, because we asked for V, we asked for verbose outputs. So let's move on. Okay, you've seen all this over there. HTTP open stream for this gets, then the method is get scheme HTTPS authority http.org path /get. So if you look at all these, if you have not watched the videos that I've done on web security. Go back and look at about 4 or 5 of them on HTTP method deep dive, on same origin policy versus cause, and few other ones on, I think I put all of them in the same playlist. You will understand what each of these components means, and that knowledge is necessary so that you will understand exactly what is going on at the back end. And you can see here, accept, you see, user agent call 8.50 HTTP, meaning that it's accepted 200. Then the date, you can see server, run icon or something like that. So you have detail, and you see, then the origin. So we have seen basic requests from using call rather. Then we move on to post request. Post is a request method that is used in sending data or sending requests to the server. When you want to retrieve, you use get. When you want to send data to the server, you use post. And you can see the previous one we have just discussed. Let me go back to it. You can see that is get. We use get method. Is get. You can see it. But here now, you're going to see call. And when you have the X, that's you're specifying a very important command that's the header. So this method, we are specifying that we want this method. Here you're talking about the header. Okay, so call, the method we want is post, and I'll say http /bin/post, and the header content type want JSON, and data is what? The data we are sending is username, test user, role is students. So if this match what the server has, the server will approve either the connection or whatever requests that we need. And in most cases, this is used in login, because you provide what you want the server to use to check against. So this, in most cases, is used during authentication. So you can use this when you want to test the authentication of a server. And I explain in authentication, that's another tutorial you should watch. Authentication, I did one on authentication. I did another one on authorization. So with this, the server, if the server accepts this, it means this exists, or the server just don't check. So that's one of the ways to test. You could provide default credential. So you can do that. Now let's continue. So this is the server's response. The data, username, test user, roles, then header, content type, JSON. So you see the response is set back, like validating it. So now look at this. This is basic authentication. Call user. So when you use flag U, you're specifying user. So it says user, that's the username, and password is pass. Then you send it to you send it to the specific URL, https basic auth then slash, because that's now pointing to that API, the login API. So user pass, and or rather the profile API. So with that, when you receive this authenticated, when you see authenticated, it means, and they say true. If it is authenticated false, then that means it failed to accept the credential sent. So, but now this indicates that it has accepted it, and the user can easily proceed with other requests. So authentication is approved. So that's how you can use call to test your backend to see whether it completes validation, or the server will just accept any user credential, whether default credential or not. So we move on to the next one, authorization. So, and I explained in the previous videos that authentication identifies who you are or who you say you are. Authorization provides access to the resources. You can authenticate successfully, but then you may not have access to the resources, because authorization is the one that actually opens the inner door for you to get to the specific resource you want. So to test authorization, so you know what you have is you use cookies or tokens like a JWT. So that's what the web servers use in or servers, okay, use in authentication, or sorry, authorization rather. Okay, so call H authorization bearer token 123 HTTP this header. So the response is authorization hosts user agent. So means it accepted it. So these commands are the ones that will show you exactly how to test your server to see whether the server is secure or not, whether it can easily be authorization and authentication can easily be bypassed or not. So it's very important for authentication. If there is repeated failure, obviously, what should that tell you? That should tell you that somebody is probably trying a brute force on the server. But without that, yeah. Okay. So let me move on to the next one. Header manipulation. So you see here, call H that's the header, then X forwarded for the local host there, then slash the URL of the server, and you receive this kind of response. The implication is that the server trusts the local host, and that is not a good way to configure your web server. It is dangerous to have a web server that trusts all requests. Okay, not. And another thing you have to look out for is that if the header appear from unusual IP or at a high frequency, then that should raise alerts. So here, what we have, the first one, let me go back. This one, it does not mean that this is what you will see every now and then, but this one is a token-based authentication method that is used here. And if you look here, the user agent is specified. So, and it shows that it's command line access, while this one host identify the targets, the target domain. So we proceed. If you want to upload file, for example, you want to test a web server against things like cross-site scripting, this is the type of command that you can use. So to make sure that your site is not susceptible to cross-site scripting and unauthorized upload of file to your server, because file upload to a server without authorization could be very disastrous. So see here, call F, the flag used is F for file, and at equal at say this is the file, the name of the file. So it's just file equal at this. Once you point to that file, then the location on the server. So, and the response here in this sample is this. It's actually accepted the file, and the content of the file is, this is a test file. Okay, so the header, content type, multipath, form data. So that file, and you already know the user agent, that's stating that it's call, and that shows that it's command line access that is used. So that is about call. There are so many other things you may still learn about call, but for this video, the next thing I will just point out is the different flags that you can use, or the common ones. So we have these options that are common. X, which is the method, is specified the method. If you have a HTTP or HTTPS, then H for header. Want to add header to it. Then D is to send data. I want to show headers. V, verbose. You know, we have used some of this. U, authentication. A, ignore SSL. L, follow redirect. If the site or the URL you send to is redirected to another domain, follow that redirect. That's what it means. Then O is save the output. You want the output to be saved into a specific file. Use flag O, then you specify the name of the file. Then F, we just send that. That's flag F, which is upload file. So now you have seen what cURL is. It's a very powerful tool, like I explained, and you can test it in your lab to see how you can use it to debug and test your web server, to see how your web server is behaving and discover any vulnerability, so you can patch your website on time before a malicious actor will get hold of it. All right, thank you very much. Don't forget to like the video, join the website, and join the channel, and also subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.